Imagine stepping into an elevator, expecting a quick ride to your destination. But instead, you're trapped in a chilling journey that never ends. The doors open to eerie floors and strange noises echo in the air. What if this elevator holds a dark secret, one that refuses to let go of its passengers? Welcome to the haunted elevator that never stops, where every floor is a descent into the unknown. It was just another ordinary day for Emily. She stepped into the building's old, rusted elevator, pressing the button for the 13th floor. The elevator hummed to life, its familiar sound of clinking metal and worry gears filling the space around her. Little did she know, this would not be any regular elevator ride. As the doors slid shut with a soft thud, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something strange about the way the elevator moved today. The air inside felt colder, almost like a draft was sneaking through the cracks. She glanced at the flickering light above her head, then at the worn-out buttons on the panel. The 13th floor was already lit up, but before she could think much of it, the elevator jerked suddenly and the lights flickered again. A faint whispering sound brushed against her ears, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emily thought it was just her imagination. Perhaps the old building had its quirks. After all, it had been around for decades. But as the elevator continued its climb, she noticed something even stranger. The numbers on the floor indicator no longer corresponded to the floors she was passing. The elevator seemed to be skipping levels, dropping down to 1, jumping up to 4, then back to 2, ever staying on the same floor for more than a few seconds. Emily pressed the button for the 13th floor again, but the elevator didn't respond. Instead, the display read floor unknown. Her heart began to race. Something was wrong. The sudden stop made her stumble, and the elevator's lights flickered violently before plunging into complete darkness. She reached out, desperate to press the emergency button, but there was no use. The elevator wouldn't respond. Then through the silence came a faint sound. It wasn't a voice, not quite a whisper. It was a slow, rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere below her. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She glanced nervously at the walls, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was she imagining it? The elevator jerked back to life, lurching downward, and as it did, the tapping stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence. For the first time since she had entered the elevator, Emily felt the overwhelming sensation that she wasn't alone. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the elevator's eerie silence persisted. The faint hum of the machinery was the only sound now, but it didn't bring comfort. It felt like the elevator had taken on a life of its own, and she was simply along for the ride. The numbers on the display flickered once again, and for a brief moment, they seemed to glitch. Instead of a clear floor number, there were random symbol shapes she didn't recognize flashing in and out of view. The elevator jerked, throwing her forward, but she quickly regained her balance. She looked at the floor indicator, which now read floor 7. But when the doors opened, the hallway outside was completely unfamiliar. There was no carpeting, no walls, only an eerie, gray mist. The floor felt off, like it wasn't solid, but more like a foggy abyss. The light above the elevator dimmed, as if struggling to keep the surroundings visible. Cautiously, Emily stepped out. She couldn't explain why, but something inside her told her to look around. She instinctively pulled out her phone, but the signal was dead. No bars. She tried to shake the growing sense of dread creeping up her spine. Maybe it was just an abandoned floor, a forgotten part of the building left to gather dust. But then, she saw something that made her stomach churn. There, at the end of the hallway, stood a figure. The silhouette was faint, almost translucent, like it was made of the mist surrounding her. Emily froze, her feet rooted to the spot. The figure remained still, staring at her with hollow eyes. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly backed toward the elevator, her hands shaking. She reached for the button, but before she could press it, the elevator doors slammed shut on their own. The numbers flashed again, this time blinking in rapid succession. Then suddenly jumping to floor 9, Emily's eyes widened, panic rising in her chest. Had she imagined the figure? No, it had been too real. She pressed her hand to the elevator wall, trying to steady herself, as the doors opened once more. This time the floor outside was different. There were no walls, no mist, just a vast, dark void. The elevator itself seemed to hover at the edge of nothingness. Emily swallowed hard, the weight of the situation sinking in. She wasn't in the building anymore. She was somewhere else entirely. Her pulse quickened. She couldn't stay here. She had to escape. But as she turned to go back inside, the doors slammed shut again. The elevator was no longer under her control. She pressed every button, but the display remained stubbornly fixed on floor 9. The elevator moved again, slowly descending, but it didn't stop. It didn't give her a choice. The faint whispering sound returned, this time closer, and her skin prickled with a cold sweat. The air felt thicker, more oppressive, and Emily realized that she wasn't just trapped in an elevator. She was trapped in a nightmare. The elevator descended further, and with each passing floor, Emily could feel the walls closing in. Her breaths were shallow, panic gripping her chest. She tried to focus on anything to calm herself, but the strange, oppressive atmosphere around her made it impossible. The elevator moved too smoothly, almost unnaturally, as though it were gliding through a dimension that didn't belong to this world. When the elevator doors finally opened again, Emily didn't want to look outside, but curiosity, or maybe something darker, pushed her to glance out. What she saw made her blood run cold. The hallway outside wasn't like the previous floors. It wasn't a mist-filled void or a dead, forgotten space. This time, it looked almost familiar. Too familiar. The floor was lined with faded wallpaper and dimly lit sconces. It was a replica of her childhood home, right down to the vintage photos on the walls. The smell of old wood and dust filled the air, and in the distance, she could hear a soft lullaby playing, one that she hadn't heard in years. Her heart skipped a beat. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be. Her hand gripped the side of the elevator, her knuckles turning white. She turned her head slowly, looking around the strange hallway. The photos on the walls were of her as a child, playing with friends, opening presents, smiling with family. But they weren't her memories. They weren't hers to remember. She had never been here, never been in this version of her home. Then she heard it, a soft voice calling her name, distant but unmistakable. Emily, come here, dear. Her body went rigid. The voice there was no mistaking. It was her mother's. But her mother had passed away years ago. Emily stepped out of the elevator against her better judgment. The voice grew louder, more insistent. Emily, don't be afraid. Come closer. I'm waiting for you. The elevator doors slammed shut behind her. She was alone now, stranded in this impossible world. The hallway stretched on endlessly in front of her, but there was no way back. Emily turned toward the voice, now echoing through the walls, pulling her forward. Each step seemed to take her deeper into the eerie, uncanny version of her past, but the more she walked, the more the walls seemed to close in, the more the darkness began to thicken. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway. A woman, with long dark hair, standing just beyond the reach of the dim light. It looked like her mother. No, it couldn't be. Her heart raced. She blinked, but when her eyes opened again, the woman was closer. Almost too close. The figure's face was twisted in a smile that didn't belong there. It wasn't the kind smile she remembered. It was something darker, more twisted, like it was forced into place. Emily. The voice was now more than a whisper, it was a command. Come with me. You belong here. Her feet felt heavy, as though the floor itself was pulling her toward the figure. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but the elevator had trapped her in this nightmare. Her legs wouldn't obey. Her body moved forward, unwillingly, toward the woman at the end of the hallway. As Emily got closer, the air grew colder, the whispers louder. But she didn't want to look back. She did. She feared what might be behind her. The figure continued to inch toward her, the smile never fading. Emily's mind raced. Who was this? What was happening? And then, with a sudden flash of realization, it hit her. The woman wasn't her mother. It was something pretending to be her, something trying to lure her in. The shadows twisted, the woman's features melting, becoming grotesque. The eyes were hollow, black pits staring into her soul. You're not my mother, Emily screamed, backing away. But the voice followed her, echoing in the hallway. But I am. I am what you fear. She turned and ran back to the elevator, slamming her hand against the doors. They opened. She rushed inside, her breathing erratic, and pressed every button she could, desperate to escape. The elevator moved again, and as the doors slid shut, the hallway outside vanished, replaced by the darkness of the unknown once more. Emily collapsed against the wall of the elevator, trying to calm her racing heart, but there was no time to rest. She knew that whatever force was controlling this haunted elevator wouldn't stop until it claimed her. And this time she wasn't sure she'd be able to escape. The elevator moved with a steady hum, but it felt like it was heading deeper into the unknown. Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The world outside the elevator was changing, warping, becoming more surreal with every floor. The voice, her mother's voice, still echoed in her ears, but she knew it wasn't real. It couldn't be. Her mother had been gone for years, and this elevator was something far beyond her understanding. But as the elevator descended, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The air grew colder, the darkness outside thickening. Emily's heart hammered in her chest, her palms slick with sweat. She glanced at the floor indicator at red floor 15, but there was no sound of the elevator slowing down. No sign that it would stop anytime soon. Each passing second felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the elevator jerked violently, and the lights flickered. The floors she had passed before no longer seemed to exist. In their place, a black void stretched endlessly, a void that felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. She gripped the metal bar beside her, steadying herself, but the unease grew stronger. The whispers returned, louder this time, filling her ears, suffocating her thoughts. They were coming from all directions, coming from inside the elevator, from outside the elevator, from the very walls themselves. She could no longer distinguish where they were coming from, only that they were all around her. Emily, Emily, you cannot escape. The voices sang in eerie harmony. This place, this is where you belong. Forever, the elevator continued to drop. She had lost all sense of time, of how long she had been trapped in this nightmarish ride. Was it minutes? Hours? Days? The longer she stayed in the elevator, the more she began to lose herself to the madness. The darkness outside the elevator became thicker, consuming the light from above, until all she could see were the glowing numbers of the floor indicator. The only thing that kept her tethered to reality, but they were no longer stable. The numbers flickered, changing randomly, never staying the same for more than a moment. She squeezed her eyes shut, hoping the sight of the flashing numbers would stop, hoping the noise in her head would go away. But when she opened her eyes again, something had changed. The elevator was no longer the same. The walls were covered in markings, strange symbols she didn't recognize. Some were drawn hastily, as though someone or something had scratched them into the metal, while others were more intricate, carved with purpose. They seemed to shimmer in the dim light, drawing her gaze. The air inside the elevator felt heavier, thicker. Emily could feel it pressing against her chest, suffocating her, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the temperature. It was as if the very essence of the space had changed, warped into something unnatural. The elevator wasn't just a machine anymore. It was alive, and it was pulling her deeper into its grip. She needed to escape. She had to get out. The doors opened with a soft whoosh, and Emily stepped out onto yet another floor. But this time it wasn't a hallway, a misty void, or a distorted version of her childhood home. No, this floor was different. It was darker, colder, and more foreboding. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the floor beneath her feet felt sticky, like the very ground was rotting away. Before her stood a figure, not unlike the one she had seen earlier, except this time it wasn't just a silhouette. It was real, fully formed, standing tall in the shadows. The figure was humanoid, but its features were obscured by the darkness. Its body twisted and distorted in ways that didn't seem possible. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with a sickly green light, and as it took a step forward, the ground seemed to tremble beneath Emily's feet. She froze, her body unwilling to move, her breath caught in her throat. The figure's mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of a human mouth. It spoke in a low, guttural voice, the words barely audible, but the meaning was clear. "You cannot escape," it hissed. "You never will." And with that, Emily knew. This wasn't just an elevator, it was a trap. A place meant to keep souls trapped in an endless cycle, never allowing them to escape. And the figure standing before her was the manifestation of whatever force had taken control of this place. She wasn't just fighting the elevator now. She was fighting for her very soul. The elevator door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in this hellish place, and the darkness closed in. She was no longer just a passenger. She was a part of this nightmare. Emily's pulse raced as the elevator doors slammed shut behind her, and she stumbled backward, her hands scrambling to press the emergency button. But the buttons didn't respond. There was no escape. Her heart pounded in her chest, and the air around her seemed to thicken, pressing down on her, as if the elevator itself was alive, tightening its grip around her. The figure in the shadow slowly advanced, its glowing green eyes never leaving her. Every step it took made the ground beneath her feet vibrate with a low, unsettling hum. She backed away, her legs shaking, but the elevator's claustrophobic walls seemed to close in on her, trapping her in this nightmare. "No," Emily whispered, her voice barely a breath. "This can't be happening." But the figure was unrelenting. It moved closer, its jagged teeth glinting in the dim light. As it reached out for her, she felt the air around her grow even colder, as if the very essence of this place was pulling her into its grip. She was caught between the weight of the elevator and the terrifying presence that loomed before her. The walls of the elevator seemed to bend and distort, the lights flickering erratically. For a brief moment, the entire space felt like it was suspended in a void, a place where time and reality no longer made sense. Emily closed her eyes tightly, trying to block out the sight of the figure, trying to hold on to any shred of reality. She wasn't sure how long she had been trapped in this endless descent, but it felt like days, maybe weeks. Each second stretched into eternity, each floor falling deeper into the unknown. The elevator moved again. But this time, it didn't descend. No, it surged upward, faster than it ever had before, as though being pulled by some unseen force. Emily felt her stomach lurch as the world outside the elevator blurred into darkness. Her thoughts were a tangled mess, and she realized, with a cold, sinking feeling, that the elevator was no longer taking her anywhere. It was moving in a loop, endlessly cycling through the floors, never stopping, never letting her go. She pressed herself against the elevator walls, her breath ragged, her thoughts scattered. The figure was still there, always lurking just out of reach. Its presence always felt, even when it wasn't directly in front of her. The figure didn't stop. The ride continued, the endless descent into madness. Then, suddenly, there was a loud crash. The lights flickered and went out, plunging the elevator into complete darkness. She lay there on the cold metal floor, unable to move. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic pounding in her chest, each heartbeat echoing in the silence. And then, the voice returned, faint at first, but growing louder with each passing second. "Emily," it whispered, low and chilling. "You are mine now, forever." Emily's blood ran cold as the words sank in. She understood now. This wasn't just a haunted elevator. It was a prisoner place where lost souls were trapped, never to escape. The figure, the voice, everything she had experienced was part of the trap, part of the never-ending cycle. The elevator moved again, but this time, Emily didn't resist. She didn't fight. She could no longer tell if she was awake or asleep. She could no longer tell if she was alive or dead. Everything had merged into one endless, inescapable nightmare. The doors of the elevator opened once more, and the figure stepped forward. This time, Emily didn't scream. She didn't cry out. There was no point anymore. The elevator had won. She was trapped. And with that realization, the world around her faded to black, and the elevator continued its journey forever.